Bam.
Hi, this is Jeffrey Hayzlett, and I'm watching the Break It Down show.
Yeah, I love it. Man, modern technology is wonderful because you don't have to stand on a stage. We don't have to get on airplanes, but sometimes it throws a lot of challenges at us trying to get things done. But man, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate chatting with you. We get to have these incredible conversations. You have a podcast. You get to talk to people all the time. You know what it's like to interact with people and blow people's minds and have your mind blown. So I appreciate the heck out of you doing this with me.
Well, thank you, and you too. I mean, the average podcaster never lasts about more than 10 episodes. So when guys like you and I are doing it for years, it says something about, one, the listeners love us and appreciate what we're doing and what we're putting out there, and then two, it's just a great medium to connect. I mean, it's one of the few mediums that you can actually connect, and you're actually in someone's head.
Yeah.
You're in your head. And so it's nice to be able to do that and do it right.
Yeah, and you can explore a lot of topics. You can look. I know you're supposed to get nichey, but I think life is a niche, and the ability to connect different disciplines and sometimes to take a break from those things. I don't need every single thing to be for my newsletter. This, and this. I want to enrich life as opposed to focus 100% on promoting, and that kind of thing. I just don't want to do that. And maybe that's why I'm around 1,500 episodes later.
Yeah, well, there's riches in the niches. There's no doubt about that. I mean, being able to find the right people. And, the medium that we do, though, is all about content. We create great content. And if you create great content, then you get a good community, a great community that follows you. And then from there, you can make some money. I mean, you can actually have good commerce as a result of it. So it's important for you to be able to know what we're supposed to be doing. And that's as a podcast host, as a media host, I do both television and podcast. And, as you mentioned, on stages and on so many other places that you got to do it. You got to do it right.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that sets me apart is there's two things really is I'll bring in a co-host or a second guest to create a little positive tension. We're doing mano a mano this time, but let's say there's another person who's in the Speakers Hall of Fame and I bring them into, for my network to have this conversation. I love doing that, especially people who should know each other but don't. And the other thing that I do is I'll hop in my truck and I will go sit across from you. I got to know what part of the world you live in, but I will go to your house if possible and sit across from you and say, hey, let's do this in real time, because there is that face-to-face real human value. And the thing I've learned from this is obviously the way you vibe physically, but when I go to your house, you're going to do my show, but I'm in your house, you become the host of me. You're like, hey man, you want some cookies? Can I make you a sandwich? No matter how famous you are, I've met a lot of famous people because of my show. And you're like, hey, I just made some cookies. Would you like some? And it changes something in the dynamic and how we interact.
Yeah, well, let's be clear. You come to my house, you're not getting cookies. You get scotch.
Damn it.
You get scotch. You get scotch, you get bacon, and you get bacon. Those are the two things that I always got in my house for sure. But yeah, it is kind of cool to be able to do. I live in South Dakota, which is a small little rural state up in the upper Midwest. And of course, we love it. And I live in New York City as well. And I live in Miami. I've got places in all three places, but this is my home. And to come home is always a cool thing to do. And, again, this medium allows us, look, you're sitting where you're at. I'm sitting where I'm at. I think you're in Orange County, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So you're in Orange County. I'm sitting here in South Dakota, and we're communicating to people from all over the world. And I mean, where else can you do that? And I just think that's the neatest thing in the world.
One of the things that's interesting, though, about this medium is so there's a ton of opportunity. And for me, primarily, look, I make a little bit of money from my show. What my show does for me is it is a powerful networking tool, and it creates a lot of opportunity. It's on me to figure out how to turn that into some kind of money. So there's a lot of value in my show, but it's not always in like, hey, Pete, here's a check, right? It's something else for me. But not everybody even gets to that part. We just saw this week in the news, Spotify is like, hey, so much for the podcast realm. We're going to cancel our contract with the Sussexes. We're going to kill Gimlet as a brand, and we're going to move on to other things. That's how hard podcasting is. And this is not because the Sussexes, I wrote about this on LinkedIn, but Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, they don't suck. It's just, this is very hard to do.
It's really hard. It's hard to do. I mean, I remember when Gimlet was bought. Gimlet was bought for $100 million. It was doing $1 million at the time it was bought. It was bought 100 times revenue. It's a hard business. You know, in C-suite radio, we have 450 podcasts. We have about 70 TV shows on the TV side, C-suite TV. You know, 50 million downloads. We're actually one of Spotify's largest customers because we use their backbone. But nonetheless, we're on every podcast engine that possibly is, and we feed up ads. We demand aggregate all of our hosts together, but it's a tough business. If you're looking at it to make just money, I always tell people, what do you want, fame or fortune, when you get into this? And for most people, podcast is not a destination. It's a tool. It's a great tool. Right. It's a great tool to be able to, talk to your customers, talk to your community, talk to your tribe, to interact, in terms of making it happen, and to use it as a way to get business if that's indeed the tool that you want to use, or you could look at it as a tool to impact others. So there's a lot of different ways that you can go at it. The average business podcast, Pete, I don't know if you know this, is about 22 to 27 minutes long. Has less than they do less than 2,000 downloads in a month. Right. And, if somebody can get to 2,000, 2,500, they're doing better than the average. And then if they get to 2,500 an episode, which is where we try to put them, they're going to be in the top 1%, top 10% of podcasts in the world. So it's not that, a lot of people are listening. There's just a lot of podcasts out there, and it's even going to be more as we go along. This podcast, I said this the other day in a meeting, podcast is the new Twitter. And by the way, I think it's a new way of getting news too, because I think news is becoming less and less relevant as it takes up more and more opinion. Yeah. I mean, and look, right now we're pushing the Twitter. We're live on Twitter right now. And, that's awesome. One of the channels, right? And so that is true. We are learning, like, you're an expert in your field, right? You're a speaker, Hall of Fame member. You've got all these different credentials, and someone can disagree with you, but they are disagreeing with your expertise, and so they do so at their own peril. And maybe they're right, but you have legitimacy. I've had hundreds of PhDs on my show, and they are very specialized in what they do, and they know it. And so we can actually ask the person who knows about this particular thing. And so it is an amazing way to go and explore these topics. Right now, it's a trending thing where Joe Rogan is trying to have a conversation with someone about vaccinations with JFK Jr. as he tries to work on his presidential campaign. All of this stuff is going on in the podcast world. Yeah, and some of it's good and some of it's just bullshit. But that's a different thing. I mean, you can be an expert is not a thought leader, but thought leaders certainly are experts, And I think that's a unique distinction to be able to know that. And, and look, today you can have a podcast, you can put up a website, you can write a book, you can do all these different things, and you might be seen like you are a thought leader or an expert, but that doesn't make you one unless you're recognized, you have haters, you have all these other things that are part of it. I mean, I watch people who become at 18, 19, become life coaches. You put up a website. Now you're 19 as a life coach. You're not a life coach. You're a teen coach. Let's just be very clear about that. So, but there's some, you got to earn some of these badges. You got to earn some of that. You mentioned I'm in the Hall of Fame. I'm in 5 business Hall of Fames, Direct Marketing Hall of Fame, Business Marketing Hall of Fame, Sales and Marketing Hall of Fame, Printing Hall of Fame, and Speaking Hall of Fame. I've been lucky in my career to, bought and sold over 250 businesses in my career, 25 billion, be a Fortune 100 officer, have my own primetime television show on Bloomberg. I've done a lot of damn good things, in my life. Yeah. Probably some bad things too, but, but most overall pretty good things. And, with that earns you some stripes, and and I'm cashing in on some of those stripes. Yeah. Yeah, no, and the access to do these kinds of things when you realize that we're getting more siloed in a lot of ways. And so you jump into my little tiny silo, but if you repeat that and you constantly go on other shows, you really can interact with a very rich audience base. Folks, they love me, right? And they buy the books from the people that come on the show. They go to the websites. And so I don't have to tell them, I don't have to say, click link in bio. I always mock this, link in bio. Hey, make sure you subscribe. You don't have to people know this already because they love what you do, and you're introducing this person to them. It's as if we're sitting, in a bar having a conversation. Hey, who's this? Oh, it's Jeffrey. You're going to love this guy. Yeah. Well, by the way, I made a mistake. I should, at this time of night, I should have poured myself a scotch. I've
Me
been trying to
too.
think. I should just reach over there. I got a bottle of scotch back there and start pouring. But yeah, the
Yeah.
it's I think that's a good point that you make in terms of people. Don't treat people like they're stupid.
Yeah.
You don't have to shout at people. People tell me, oh, you can't have long format. I mean, you have a show that's an hour. I just told you the average business show is 22 to 27 minutes. Well,
Yeah.
so why is it an hour? Well, because you can.
Yeah.
Because you can. And I think that's a pretty unique thing. People say, oh, geez, you can't do short, you can't do long form. I go, that's bullshit. That's not true. You can do long form if it's good. If it's good, people listen. I said, when was the last time you binge watched Downton Abbey or an entire season? That to me is long form because you sit through 8 hours of, or maybe you watch Band of Brothers, took the entire 2 days, or the whole Yellowstone, 6 seasons now of Yellowstones, and you binge watched all those, If it's good content, you'll watch it. And by the way, you'll not only watch it and listen, you'll watch and listen to it again.
Yeah. Life is long form, and sure. We're talking about life right now.
Talking to dumb people is short form. I don't like doing that. Yeah. I don't, one big rule. I don't like the, who was LeVar Burton and the producer. I can't remember his name. I apologize. He might yell at me, but anyway, I met him. I was speaking in Orlando, and they asked me, Jeff, would you come and watch our keynote? Because I was the main headliner that day, and I said, sure, I'll come watch. I don't rarely do that, but I really liked LeVar a great deal. I met him, and we became good friends, and I just thought he was a great guy and what he was doing with the Reading Rainbow and all the things he's done in his life, acting and some of the roles, and he's just a genuine good guy. And so I went down and watched his presentation. The first slide was, "We don't work with assholes." And I went, I love this guy for the rest of my life. I thought that was, he put that right on the slide. And I thought that was one of the best slides.
One of my favorite things, I do a lot of military things when I speak because I've got a lot of knowledge in combat. I used to be a spy, so I have a lot of specific knowledge about ground truth, right? And when they say, because the military loves a slide, right? Like we probably started the whole thing of like, you must have a PowerPoint. And so they'll say, hey, you have to give us your slide. I don't have a slide. Oh, you have to have a slide. And so I give them a white slide, just white blank. Because I'm not here for the slide. I'm like, there's my slide. Okay, great. Let's get back to work. I am the thing you need to pay attention to because I have this knowledge from the reality of the real world. You're not paying attention to some graphic. I am the thing. I have the knowledge. And it's great. It's such a powerful illustration. They look and they're like, what's going on? And I'm like, yeah, my slide is blank because I want you to pay attention right here.
By the way, you can have good graphics and good slides. I was with a group this weekend. I was leading a thought council, which is a mastermind for thought leaders, and somebody was struggling. They were doing a slide presentation. They were doing a presentation about what they're about to go sell, and the slides were kind of hidden, and because we were in this room and they were behind lamps and so forth, so they were hidden, so he couldn't see it, and he couldn't continue his presentation. He'd have to go around to look at it, right? And I said to him, after it was over, we give feedback. We give, input as thought leaders to another thought leader. And I said, look, you got a real issue if you can't give your presentation without looking at your slide.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to criticize you. Maybe you need it as a crutch or, because sometimes we need prompts. Some people need those. And I said, but you're a very cerebral person. You got to take this in your body. It's got to be in your body. If you're going to be, a world-class speaker, you've got to be able to present and tell stories and be able to captivate and not just read what was on the slide. We could all read that. And in fact, where I was sitting, I could read it better than you could, and you couldn't read it. So therefore you couldn't even give it. So you really got to get that in your body. And so I get with you. I've been in other presentations, when my slides have gone out. One time I was in India and the power went out 48 times in an hour and a half. I was doing a big hour-and-a-half keynote, and I was at the point where I was just, guys, quit trying to turn the projector on. I can do it without it. Right. I'm a professional, right? Yeah. The only bad thing was the microphones weren't working, and more importantly, it was summertime in India in a hotel, and the air conditioning wasn't working. That was what was worse. I was sweating like a stuffed pig, So it was pretty bad. But you should be able to go do that. And one at a time, I remember showing up at Silicon Slopes, which is in Utah. They had this big tech event. This is back when they were first doing it. And they had this speaker before me got up, and the power kept going out. and he couldn't finish his speech. And so then they were apologizing about mine, and they were about to hook it up. I said, don't hook it up. And I was in front of the whole group. I said, don't hook it up. I said, I'm a professional. I can do this. And I did a keynote, just, a cappella, so to speak. What would you call that? What would you call a speaker without a speaker without a PowerPoint, or a speaker without a projector? I don't know.
Badass?
I don't know. Badass. That's what it is. Badass. I said, I can do this. I can do this. Yeah. If you can't do it, then I guess you're not at that level, I guess.
When I'm teaching people how to do podcasting, because there's a specific hosting, and I don't mean software hosting. I mean like standing in front of people or performing in this way in front of a camera or in front of you face to face. There are certain things you have to train your brain to do, and eliminating ums and ahs and all of the extra words that's in your producer brain. So you have to pay attention to what the show needs, and the show needs the cleanest product possible going into the camera, going into the recording device on the first, right here in my chest. It's not up here in my head, excited. If it is, it's by design, because I'm paying attention to what the show needs. I also know that you're an author. And so I'm going to go down here and I'm going to say, hey, go to Hayzlett.com and check on the author tab. And so I'm taking care of you, and I'm also taking care of the audience. And I'm saying, wait, hold on. Did you say stuffed pig, bacon, and scotch in this last 10 minutes? Oh my God. And so I'm taking care of all these things simultaneously, but not losing track of the train that we're on. And that's all part of this professional thing you're talking about, because we're prepared. We know how to manage this conversation, manage this performance, manage this talk. But there's elements you have to have already built into your head, because you are prepared. You've earned the right to have all these people's time.
Yeah, and you know your job. I mean, there's a give and take in a podcast interview. There's give and take, and me help you, you help me, because in the end, what we're trying to do is serve the public, right? It's listener. And I'm in this case, I'm Henry Kissinger, who shows up for a press conference and says, what questions do you have for my answers, right? So, right. I know what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it. I have to make it good for you, because otherwise you're never going to ask me back, or you don't want to, there are times in which I've done interviews with somebody and said, how did it go? I said, not very good. And I said, we're not going to use this episode, because I was asking you questions and you're shaking your head. This is an audio. This is a podcast audio. That was before I was doing a TV show with a podcast. But you can't shake your head, dude. They can't see you shake your head. You have to say yes. You have to say no, right? So that's somebody that obviously doesn't know, where he's at or what he's doing at that time. So you have to know there's a sing and a sing-sang, a yin and yang to it. There's a way in which we got to do this thing, and you got to show up prepared. Me and you. Right? Yeah. Both. I can't stand a podcast where I go in. The first thing they say, Pete, is, hey, tell everybody about yourself, Jeff. And it's because you lazy son of a, whatever, that you just didn't do your homework. And I make sure that we do all those kinds of, in fact, I always, when I have a guest on, I try to find something that's so bizarre about them, or so unique. Like I have a trader who's Daryl, who's coming on the show this week. And I've got this special fact. He used to be an international competitive weightlifter, weightlifter. I mean, and you look at him today and you go like, hey, dude, seriously? And, having some fun. I'm going to have some fun with that, because I'm going to say, hey, when did you kind of give that up? Because you don't look the same, and to me, it's fun. Or you find different facts about people that they go, where did you get that? Well, we did our homework. Homework.
Yeah, this is a big thing. So when I would go out on a patrol with the military unit, my job was to bring back something. I'm with everybody else, right? We're all going to ask questions. My job as a spy is to bring back something that nobody else has. That's my job on the patrol. And so I don't ask, like, where are your women? Where are the bombs? Of course, I want to know that. But if you want to find out where the bombs are, the question you never ask is, where are the bombs?
Where are the bombs, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you never ask that. So they won't tell you. Right? So you ask all the other questions. And this is one of the things, is whatever you want to find out, you don't ask for it. You have to take a different path, because you don't get to ask the question you want. The thing you need is somewhere else. And you have to be hands off the wheel at times and allow you to take over and take me to where you need to go, and that takes a lot of surrendering. But if you know how to drive that way, you can get to some really magical places. Look, I know 100 ways to make you tell me something very unique. about who you are and where you're going, but can I keep the entire conversation going in that new place? Like, can I introduce a topic that you're just so excited about that you have to talk about it, by tweaking something slightly. And that's the magic in these kind of conversations.
Yeah, it's being able to, I like to say it. Sometimes I get so wound up on these. I said, I have to apologize because I put the quarter in, you get to go for the full ride. It's like riding the pony in front of the supermarket. You just, when you were a kid, you just wanted to do that so bad. And quite frankly, as an adult, it's not a bad thing either.
I want to throw a couple things at you that I do whenever I'm advising a company on podcasts. The first thing I try to do is talk them out of it, because most of them don't have the heart to do it, and they don't really have the budget. They don't understand the challenge. Like you said, you don't get to pick the outcome, right? And so I'll say, really, you probably don't want to do this. And if you do, and you have a budget, you should probably just go find a show that you think is fantastic, and you should really just buy an ad on their show.
Yeah, sponsor it, and then get on shows. I mean, like I said, the statistics are a majority, of like 80%, it's like 80% never make it past 10 episodes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then half of them never make it past the first year. So, that's a statistic. You're at 1,500. I'm not quite at that, but I'm doing a lot. I've been doing a lot. Plus I do TV as well. And, that's a lot of episodes. I know what it takes. I remember the first time I was pitching, hey, to Bloomberg, and to CNBC and to all the networks whenever they were all, kind of courting me, and I was wanting to do the show. And I decided, no, I want to produce my own show because I want to make the money from it. I want to own the show. And then I was so stupid. I said, yeah, it's a year-long show every week. And then I said, no. They said, hey there, cowboy, maybe slow down. Let's slow down. And Bloomberg says, we'll take 8 episodes and so-and-so. And I went out and sold them $2 million, got this sold, blah, blah. We're going to put it on. And then it took me 3 to 4 days for every episode. I was like, oh, thank you, dear Lord. Thank you, dear Lord, for talking me out of that baby. And then you do an hour, which I think is just wonderful. I used to do an hour of my show, and I had different blocks and segments and crazy questions and all kinds of gimmicks and different things. And finally, I decided I don't want to do that. Yeah. It takes a very special person, takes a very special dialogue in terms of the message and the way that you do it and how you do it. I'm good with 22 minutes. I'm good. Yeah. Now, I'm also building mine for TV, right? So I want to have it the same length as TV. You got to put commercials in it. I sell it commercially. It's a big thing. I just celebrated 5 years on United Airlines, because we also put it out in various places. So, do it for different reasons, and you got to applaud. But, you'll learn. That's one of the things in this podcast business. If you get started, when you say you're talking people out of it, but when you get started, what you did the first day won't be the same way you do it a year later.
That's right.
52 episodes later, you learn like, no, I'm not doing that.
One of the other things I say is when you get good, it's 10 to 1, 10 hours of stuff that has nothing to do with the show to produce the hour of stuff. And you're talking about that with the TV, it's even more because it's so complex. And if you're trying to do, it's harder to do 20 minutes of a TV style show than it is to do an hour of us interacting in this way. Correct. Because there's no room for error. Everything's got to be tight.
Yeah, you were talking about the ums and ahs. I don't edit stuff. I don't edit much out. Of course, put it through some filters, those kind of things. I pretty much let things go because I want some of, it's like I grow honey on my place, on my ranch, and I like the bits of bees in the jar, right? You know what I mean? So I like the grittiness of that podcast or that feeling of like, this is real and so forth. Not saying yours isn't in any way, shape, or form.
No, I get what you're saying though. Yeah, you like if they say bullshit, it stays
in. I want it in there. Well, and by the way, I get red marks on Apple all the time because I swear words in the same, all the time. So I get bleeped on my own show, so I get it. And I think you just got to find your own style with it, right? In terms of being able to do your own cadence, your own energy with it. It's, you got to find that flavor. And a lot of people, when they first get started, they copy other people, which is not bad, but don't copy everything. You got to make it uniquely yours or it's not, it's just not a good show. It's, and also how do you make it stand apart? I mean, we have one podcast that John, I can't remember his host, but he was doing one on innovation. And he was going to do this big podcast on innovation and want to call it, Innovation with Jeffrey Hayzlett. And I said, whoa, let's think of a different word. Let's think of a word that might stand out, that might be. And we came up with the word gobsmacked. You know, those gobsmack moments that you see in your business, you know, and gobsmack's kind of an Australian term, like you've been gobsmacked, hitting the head with an apple while you were sitting under an apple tree and got this great idea, Newton, you know, and there's innovation that comes from that. So I think it's good to have that flavor, that, you know, that personality that's a part of it. I think it's what makes Joe Rogan's show, I think, so good. You know, he just as nuts as he is, and let's be clear, he's a little nuts. You know, he says things and does things and puts stuff on. It's I love to watch. I watch or listen to him mostly on Reels. I watch the Reels and I enjoy that.
Yeah, that's another thing I was going to bring up and see what you thought about it. You know, like YouTube was talking about they're getting back into podcasting, although I've been pushing my podcast on there forever, but they've got a little podcast tab now. But they don't really push forward the podcast format. They push forward the shorts. And so if you want to exist on there, you really have to condense your stuff down into 1-minute clips. They don't have to be necessarily good. You just have to hit 15 seconds is really the sweet spot. And so that's really what you have to do to exist. The real, and then you can go over and you can spend your whole life publishing on TikTok and publishing on Instagram and publishing and publishing and publishing. You know, it really, it can take those 10 hours. You can double that.
Oh, you can. Well, you have to be where the people are. Like, so for instance, a lot of people say, Jeff, I have to be on YouTube. No, I don't, because my audience isn't on YouTube. My audience is, you know, is where they're at, and that's where I go and I do what I need to do. And then other people come to me and say, hey, Jeff, geez, you're doing all this stuff. You've written 4 books, millions sold, blah, blah, blah. You really need to do a course. You need to do some courses so people can take courses. You'll make a killing at it. Well, I probably would make money at it. There's no doubt about it. But you know what? I don't want to do that. And so therefore, I'm not doing it. Yeah. And, you know, and that's okay. And that's what I like about the business. Do it the way you want. Doesn't mean it's right. Doesn't mean it's wrong. Just means the way it's you're doing it. Could have done it faster. Could have done it better. Could have been prettier. You know, people write to me all the time. You know, you have a face for radio. You know, whatever. You know, hey, my wife. I remember when I first did Celebrity Apprentice, when I was a judge on Celebrity Apprentice, first year. Somebody wrote to me and said, my wife's a personal trainer. Would you like her number? You know, you asshole. You know? Wow. Yeah, it took some guts to say that, but you know, it was true. But you know, nonetheless, you don't need to do that. We don't need to do that.
You like her number? It's a very nice thing. Nice offer. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. That's, she's a prostitute. Would you like her number? I never
get that too. Yeah. You know what? Yeah. Thanks.
No, she's a nut.
It's boy. You know, that course thing. That really is a thing. And I've had a bunch of friends tell me, man, you can make a lot of money on courses. And they are all probably right. One, I don't want to make a course. I've started 15 of them, right? Yeah. And I have all my SPY skills, absolutely great material for a course. I just don't want to do it. And here's the other thing is you finish this course, you still have the same problem of how do you gather enough people in the room to pay attention to your course so that they buy it for $20 a head. And then what course is next? Because you can't, you have to just, and now actually, you're not a person who writes courses. You're also a person who builds a funnel. And it's like, well, I didn't want to be the course guy. And now I'm a guy who manages an entire funnel. And then you end up in this, look, there's nothing wrong with this if you make your money doing this, but then you become, you know, a funnel bro. And I don't want to have a newsletter. I don't want to have a funnel. I don't want to write courses. I don't want to do that. I want to create these incredible conversations and then see what's next, I guess. I mean, maybe that's a bad business model, but I don't want to write courses.
But you know what's cool? It's your business model. And so if people don't like it, you know, it's like one time I had this woman who was a reporter for, I think, the London Times, was following around Richard Branson and I. This is early on social media, is following us around, kind of give us, you know, our view. And finally she wrote, I don't like following you around. She put it on my I think it was Facebook or Twitter. And I wrote back, well, quit following me. I didn't ask you to follow me. You know, I didn't ask for your opinion about my business model. It's my business model. If you don't like it, I get it. You don't do business with me. I'm fine with it. Not for everybody.
Yeah, right. The podcast world has changed so much. I know we've talked a lot about that, but we both have podcasts. So I often see things that are in the future. I'm curious what you see. Like because it changes lightning fast, right? Like right now, TikTok is leading the way, but we've seen Vines come and go. We've seen all kinds of these things.
Twitter Spaces right now. I mean, Twitter Spaces. I mean, or Clubhouse. I mean, Clubhouse. Yeah. I said Clubhouse was going to go the way of what was it, Sim City or something like that.
Yeah.
Second Life. I said, Clubhouse will will have the same a shelf life as Second Life. If you remember,
Right.
Second Life was an online avatar, virtual world for people who didn't have a first life. So that's what that was. And so you've got all these different things. I think what's not so much about what is the new things, but what are the things that are going to go away. I really had a great conversation this week with a group of thought leaders. I believe news as we know it today is going away. It's going. I think people are not going to turn into it. They're not going to do it. It's going to be fed in different ways. It just really is. You miss the news. You miss the news in the morning. What do you really miss? Tune in tomorrow. It's the same shit.
Yeah. A lot of bad news too.
Yeah. Well, without question, we've always had bad news, right? The problem is they just focus on it all the time, right? Rather than real news. I actually enjoy watching news from other countries, like the BBC and others. I get a pretty, I think, grounded, information. And I don't always feel like I get that in the States anymore. And that's not good. I still think there's some good bastions for it. I mean, people might argue about the Times, but I enjoy reading the Times. I don't always believe in all their policies and the things that they do, but I enjoy the news and I enjoy them. But they're not always right. They're, publishing stuff they're wrong or get sued or something along those lines. I've always enjoyed reading the Wall Street Journal. I love the USA Today, but I just like it for the crossword puzzle for the most part. Let's just be clear. I like the crossword puzzle.
Yeah. Well, okay. So people love their news though, right? And look, I'm grew up in the Bay Area, and you watch the news and you see that there is a very specific demographic driven form of the news. It is very left leaning, and that's cool. They're selling ads and they've got to make money to survive, and that's what they do.
Not all news is left leaning. Come on. I just spent last year working with Americano, which is you think of it as the Fox for Hispanics. Right. And there's 16 hours of original programming, 24 hours a day, focusing on the Hispanic population. So there has been no 24-hour news for Hispanics, period. Zero. None. Zip. But they're also right. They're right of the spectrum. Okay. They are truly red. They're not blue. They're red. But you sit there and look at it and say, well, that makes sense, because if you look at most Hispanics, and whether you call it Latinos, you wouldn't call them Latinx, but Hispanics, they are typically more conservative and less Democrat. So they're much more to the Republican side, and even more so to the farther side of the Republicans. So they're serving an audience there, which I think is a good way to be able to do it. I think it is good. But I think there's balance in news. I think some have been more successful than others just because I think they've done a better job marketing. I think Fox did a hellacious, unbelievable job capturing a population and riding it to the grave. And riding it to the grave. And now I think they're toxic. They're extremely toxic in terms of their approach, the way they've done it. They've gone too far. But you could say the same thing about CNN on the other side.
Sure. Part of this change too. So look, love or hate Tucker, he draws tens of, I'm not a Tucker guy, by the way. I'll just say this. I don't care.
No, but you got to look at the numbers. I mean, the guy got fired from Fox, and the next day he has how many millions of people watching him? When the average television show, listen, let's give you the numbers here. Okay. And this is if you looked at the biggest television show night in TV history, right? In a series history, was Happy Days and the final episode of Happy Days. And when the Fonz jumped over the sharks, okay, that's when it went over. And that's also a different term, jumping the shark is that's bizarre. But that night on ABC, 60 million people watched that show. 60 million people watched that show. Now, fast forward to about, let's say 5 years ago, before we started really seeing streaming TV the way we see it. Biggest show on television, Big Bang Theory. Big Bang Theory. You know what? You know how many people watched that particular show on the finale? 6 million. Oh my 6 million people. Now, and I was lucky when I was in Bloomberg. I was doing a primetime television show every Thursday night, and I had the #1 show on business, #1. Now, And let's just be clear, not many people are rushing home to watch a primetime business show. Okay. But I had more people watching me online than were watching through television. Then you go and watch a guy like Tucker, and whether you like him or not, whether you like it to watch his show, political, some of the crap he put on, I would say it's crap. That's okay. You can, sometimes crap works. But nonetheless, then the other night, what he had 28 million people watching, 28 million people. Holy crap. And
it's crazy. Yeah. His video on Twitter, just on Twitter, has spun. The last time I looked was like 135 million times. That's more than the Super Bowl. I'm looking. While you were talking, I was looking down at Mr. Beast's channel on YouTube. He puts out at least a show a month. He beats the Super Bowl most of the time.
Yeah. You can't even touch those numbers. They're off the charts. You almost can't even believe them. Like, did they add some zeros that we don't know about? Well, but no, but look what he does. He gives away a plane. That guy gives away a plane. I mean,
but he can do that because he's got 115 million people.
That's because he can. I mean, if he gets on Spaces and charges like $1 a week, $1 a month, think of the money that guy's going to make.
It's insane. And we didn't even talk about these guys with the video games and everything else. So if you've got a tiny audience of 5 million people, like Dan Bongino's another guy. Him and Stephen King got into it and I don't know. Somebody said, like, oh, you're just a little podcaster. Excuse me. Like, I'm not a Bongino guy at all, right? But that guy has millions of people paying attention to him. So if you can exit and you have 5 million people, Steven Crowder didn't need anybody else's money. He can make his own money now. He's got millions of people paying attention.
5 million. You don't need 5 million people. I mean, we got some guys that are really doing well. That are bulls, bears, and blockchain, and they're doing Twitter Spaces, and they're getting 200,000 views a day.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, now that's unbelievable. Let's imagine they got everybody to subscribe.
Right.
$1 a month.
Yeah.
$1 a month. They're making that's making great gold. And there's a guy there on Spaces that's doing like 32,000. He's not a big, huge follower. I mean, 32,000. You go, hey, that's it's okay. I got a million. I got close to a million. And he's got 32,000. If he gets everybody to give him $1 for a subscription, right? You push subscriptions too. You get everybody get $1, and everybody put $1 in. I'm like, come on, put $1 in. I mean, the guy's making $37,000 or $30,000 a month. That's a pretty good living, man.
Yeah, yeah.
That's good money. I mean, that's not. I don't care where you're at. By the way, I used to have a business that I was in charge of for the marketing, $187 billion in gross revenue. And somebody would come to me and say, Mr. Hayzlett, this thing's going to cost us for $2 million. I said, what do you mean $2 million? I don't know where you're from. $2 million, $2 million. $30,000 a month is $30,000 a month. That's real money. That's real money.
It's real money. And I used some right-leaning examples. If Rachel Maddow decided I don't want to have the control of MSNBC over me and I want to do my own thing, she would make more money if she just walked away. People adore that lady, and they would pay her money. And she could do it on Twitter. She could cut a great deal with Twitter because Twitter wants those personalities. And again, there's a thing, and I'm curious what you think about this. There's a thing where, like, okay, you don't have to build your own audience. You can just compel Tucker and Rachel, and you get a couple, Dan Bongino come to your thing, and they're doing this on all these different platforms. So if you're a platform that gathers these people and you just give them more autonomy and just you rake your portion of their massive 30 grand a day or whatever it is, you all of a sudden can make a very solid piece of money yourself as a media company hosting.
You just described the C-suite radio, C-suite TV.
Well, there you go.
We aggregate great people, great content. Some of it has small followers, some of it has big followers. We have 50 million downloads. So some that's nothing to shake a finger at, so to speak. We're pretty happy with that.
So it's one thing to take someone who gets there, right? Like there's a lot of networks that do this kind of thing. They take someone famous and the famous person says, yeah, I'll do a podcast. But how do you get a person across each chasm that gets them to that next level of success? How do you break a show?
No, you have to invest in it. I mean, it doesn't come without investment of some kind. You might get one that's lucky every so often, but by and large, you're marketing, you're pushing. First of all, you got to have great content. If you don't have great content, and I don't care, you could be it's like you gotta, if you want to be a great restaurant, you have to have great food. You want to be a mediocre restaurant, be mediocre. I mean, that's just the way it is. So you got to invest. But the other thing is, the cool thing about podcasting is it's not just a destination. For a small portion of the host and the shows, it's a destination, meaning they're making real bank, okay? Or they're making real impact in their message for what they do. So they're trying to move the needle somewhere else. I mean, there's different motivations for different people. But, but if, let's say most B2B podcasters, I tell them, don't just think you're going to get rich in this, because they're not. Okay. Yeah. What I mean by that, I tell them, I said, look, they go, hey, Jeff, how's my advertising? I said, well, I got good news and I got bad news. And they said, what's the good news? I said, you got some. What's the bad news? Well, with the money that we're making off your show, we're going to have to go to lunch on it. Okay. That's what you got. And by the way, you're going to have to bring a coupon. Right. So it's not much money because there's not a lot of listeners, because the way you get paid is either through sponsorships, through subscriptions, which not everybody does subscriptions. You got to be really into it for the subscription side of it, because, you're looking for the people that just love you. And then you've got, the advertising. The advertising is paid by listenership, by thousand, by CPMs, by in terms of by 1,000 who's listening and so forth. So, and on average, it's about, let's just say, in a network like ours, we can get $50, $75 per 1,000, as opposed to the average is about $4 to $7. So, and that why? Because we've got a specialty audience, which is highly, sought after, executives, people own businesses, people with money, who are listening to, intellectual, heavier things. And so people love to advertise on those kinds of shows. But here's what I tell people, Pete. A lot of times what I say to folks is, don't go for the fame or fortune. What you want, or don't use it to get famous, because you're not going to get famous and you're not going to make a ton of money from it. So use the podcast to interview the people that you really want to know or you want to do business with.
Boy.
And that's because, one, it makes it fun, and or two, if you're interviewing people that you want to do business with. So let's say I'm a coach, a trainer, an author, a speaker, some kind of thought leader, and I'm offering coaching services, or I'm offering speaking services. I can go and interview the head of every major franchise, and then they find out I'm a speaker. I give them a copy of my book, and then pretty soon they're asking me, hey, maybe you'd like to come speak at my convention. Hello, thank you for asking, right? So that's the way to use the podcast in that manner in order to really, propel your business. Again, not as a destination, but as a tool to tell people.
Yeah. I just want to add to that thing. I say this all the time to people who are thinking about a podcast. I'll say, hey, here's what we'll do. Try it out on my show. Go book a couple people. Go find your top 10 clients and invite them to come on. If you don't know how to book them, I'll book them for you. Can you even do that part of it? And these are your clients, and they struggle to do that, but the light goes on. You can use this as a tool for marketing to connect you to your sales thing, and it's a super soft thing. And then have them come back and be like, hey, do a guest spot with me, or whatever it is, right? The other thing that I think you can do as well is, because you're not competing with, you can also go to your peers and say, hey, come on my show and do this. And you can now bump their audience against yours, and you can do an exchange there in a healthy way where you're having someone it's not adversarial. It's just, you're part of the same community. So you have two people who are peer companies. Yes, you're competing, but really in this case, you're using your show to create a combination of audiences that you would benefit from. And then they can do what they want with it too. But it is your show. So there's a lot of ways to take a show and turn it into something special if you think outside the box.
Yeah, healthy tension's a good thing for everybody and overall. Yeah. The other thing is, if you're a brand of any kind, I don't care if you're a massive, big brand. And I do like the thought of people, they have to create content today. If you want to be successful, especially the digital world, really sped along. COVID helped it a great deal, because days became, weeks became months, months became years. And so now to have people find you, let me give you a good example. You can't rely on just Google anymore, because people can buy ads above you. You get shoved down. You got to constantly work on SEO. You got to constantly work to feed the engine, feed the monster. And, when I was the chief marketing officer at Kodak, I spent $20 million, not me personally, but the company spent $20 million a year just so you could find Kodak.com. We own Kodak.com. That doesn't seem right to me. Right.
Yeah.
So let's imagine you're you're a small business in St. Louis. I'm going to use a dry cleaner. All right. And you're one of 119 dry cleaners in St. Louis, by the way. Okay. You're one of 119. How are people supposed to find you? You don't have yellow page ads anymore. And you can't do Google because it's just too costly for you and so forth. So you have to become, I don't know, I call it the doctor of spots. You got to be known as the one person to come to in St. Louis. I'll take the blood out of your shirt, or I'll take the grass stains out of your jeans, whatever it might be. I'm the doctor of spots. Come trust me. Here's what I do. And I'm going to do videos. I'm going to do podcasts. I'm going to write blogs. I'm going to give all this stuff away so people can find me. And yeah, could they do it themselves? Maybe some will, and they'll love you for it, but they'll tell other people, I got this great solution from the doctor of spots down the road. But more than likely, they're going to come to you because your content drives your community, which is your followers, your likes, your friends, the people that want to do things with you. And then that's going to drive your commerce. And that's the way this world's going to work now.
Yeah, man, that's right. And I always talk about feeding the monster. If you feed the monster, you get to live on the top of the hit list. And boy, oh boy, it is expensive to feed that monster.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It does work. And it's funny because I have to work super hard in the SEO side, which they purposely, and I hate to say the they and give it a negative thing, but they purposely make it less and less valuable to deal with keywords, and it becomes increasingly like these weird combination of words just to exist in YouTube. Right. Like if you type in P.J. Turner, you might get me, you might not. If I type in your name and my name together, you would think you would see this episode, and maybe today you would, but in 3 weeks, it'll be Bon Jovi instead. And you're like, how does Bon Jovi get ahead of it? It's a very challenging thing.
Right now, that's why we should be saying Trump 20 times every minute.
That's right.
And it would help. I mean, but that does tell you that you also got to make it interesting, exciting. You got to have that BuzzFeed headline, and stuff like that. You can't just say, an interview with Jim Johnson, manager at such and such. No, like I interviewed once the CMO of the United States, and this person's in charge of selling America. Yeah, he was working for Trump. And I remember we did it, and the folks said, we're going to put in the CMO of America. I said, no, you're not. Right. You know you're not. You're not going to put the interview with, I don't even know what the guy's name is. I don't even remember his name. And you're not going to put that in there because nobody knows who he is. If I don't know him, and I'm probably one of the biggest marketing guys in the world, and I know most of the CMOs and CEOs and CFOs out there in the world today, at least the Fortune 100 and Fortune 1000, because it's a small community. And if I don't know him, nobody else knows him, so I'd be dang if we're going to lead. And they go, what are you going to lead with? I said, put a picture of Trump on there and said, how would Trump sell America? Boom. That's what you're going to get. A conversation with the CMO of the United States. Boom. Right? A much different way that you got to do it. And you got to learn those things. Whether you're a small business or a big business, you got to learn that that little bit of shock, that little bit of that BuzzFeed, a little bit of that Reddit, a little bit of that, little edge. That's how you got to start showing yourself. Like, if you killed somebody, like if you're that dry cleaner, you got to put, if you killed somebody or hurt somebody with a knife, how to get blood out of a shirt. That's what you got to lead with, right?
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I'll sometimes let the SEO generator make the title for me. And it's always something like, it's the predictive text. It's not the thing that I would pick. I can't use your book title. It's like, I don't know what that is. And so I have to type your name in, and then whatever the next three things that come up.
But by the way, when doing that as a marketer, I would tell you that you want to look at the things and write things that you're trying to solve, because people are usually searching for ways to solve someone. Like if you ever watch Dateline, this is true because they always catch the killer because they've looked up how to hide a body, how to kill someone with poison. How many tablespoons does it take? So most people are searching for that how and to solve a problem, and I think that's a great way.
Hey, I don't want to keep you a whole lot longer, but I want to, if you have time, because I know we kind of a little bit of a late start. Can we talk a little bit about AI? And I really believe the humanity that goes into AI is the critical thing. Yes, you can have a robot do your work for you. Yes, you can trust it to do things more than ever. But I'm going to tell you right now, like, I find that the more humanity I can put into my work, the more I can interact with. I don't even call them my audience. I call it my friends, the people that I'm going to go see. Like, hey, I am in Oklahoma City. Come and see me. Come and hang out, and they'll come out, and I see them. Right. That is for a guy like me. That is invaluable because one, that's how I work. That's how I tick. I want to see these people in real life. But two, yeah, it's great to have someone or something write something for me. But I've got to make the humanity part work because I think that's a differentiator.
Oh, without question. So it's funny you should ask me about this because last week I put out a thing on my TV show where I always pick up kind of an outrageous thing of the week. Like in the last couple of months, I've been talking about AI a couple of times. Like, Wendy's is putting an AI manager for when you do the drive up. I'm real concerned about that, and now your brand is nothing but a promise delivered. So am I getting fake people? Am I getting fake meat? Am I getting fakes, whatever. Now, but the biggest one that I saw was Paul McCartney, the Beatles. I'm outraged. I'm kind of outraged. He put out a deal. He found a song that either he wrote or John Lennon wrote. I couldn't figure out which. And through AI, he's going to bring John Lennon and George Harrison back. And if I don't think Ringo's dead, so he's going to use him as a live person and they're going to remake that. They're going to not remake. They're going to do a song they've never done before. That doesn't seem right to me. First of all, I don't like the fact they use auto tuners and all that other stuff. It makes them all perfect. And, I want to know that the guy's voice cracks. I want to know that when a speaker makes a flub, as I just did right now, that's okay. That's part of that's the humanity. That's part of the being of the real. And then this morning I saw someone who put a video out where she's interviewing Albert Einstein.
Right.
And there should be a disclaimer on there. There should be, I think I could know that she's interviewing Albert Einstein, that he's dead. He's not alive anymore. But my point, but she put the words in his mouth and got him to say it. And it wasn't really his voice. It was somebody else. Somebody might believe that these things are true. All of this stuff is there. I just don't think it's just, we've got some real moral and ethical things to solve before we even get close to this stuff,
Yeah. We already make apocryphal claims on what people say anyhow, right? And now we can actually see them and hear them say it. And it's
well, what if it takes you, Pete, and does an entire podcast interview of you, and it's you, but it's not you. I mean, listen, I did a special on the BBC a couple years ago because some woman saw my picture, saw my profile, wasn't me, and she gave this guy like $300,000 to $500,000. And the guy was using my voice, my pictures, all this stuff stolen off of Facebook. I was this guy named Christoph. Evidently, I was a bioengineer out of South Africa. And she fell in love with the guy. And we met for the first time face to face, really, truly, on BBC, where,
I love it.
And I said, I think her name was Carol. I said, Carol, it's not me. It's not me. That's fake. That is fake. But you talked to me. And what he did was he took my video, and a video that I do, like, hey, this is Jeffrey Hayzlett, host of All Business, and I'm going to be in your city on such and such day. And he took that video and he just stopped it and started and kept saying, oh, sweetheart, I'm sorry, there's a bad connection here in Dubai. I'm in Dubai this week because of my business. I'm saving wells, blah, blah, blah. And, and then he would talk over the video of me moving, but it wouldn't match up with the words because he said it's so bad, right? And of course, we would probably question that. You as being a spy, you would hunt him down and shoot him, but or whatever you do. But you know what I mean? She was an executive, by the way, at a pretty big company. And, you could be taken in by this stuff. So imagine AI is going to be much more real than that.
Yeah.
So, and this is some, Nigerian ring that's doing this stuff, and they just rip people off.
And it's only going to get more and more complex to figure out.
The good news is that now that I'm getting older and uglier, it's happening less often for me. They're taking
Hey, what do you want to say in closing before I wrap this thing up?
Hey, it's just a pleasure to be here. Keep doing what you're doing, and everybody that's listening, keep listening. And best thing you can ever do is go tell a friend. Go tell a friend you listen to the show every single week. You had a great time listening, and then tell people what you learned. I always think that's a good thing. At the end of my show, I always end every show with, "Hey, this is what I learned," and because I go, even though I've been real successful at the things I've done, I try to stay pretty humble with the fact that I don't know what I don't know. And so I always learn something new in everything I do. And so, and sometimes it's go do this, and sometimes it's shut up and go and don't do that.
I love it. And you guys know what I always say. Down below is the link. You can go to Jeffrey's website, grab the book there, and buddy read. Buy one for a friend. It's a great gift. You guys can spend that time together and learn something together. So everybody go do that. Thank you all so much. Let me run the credits.
Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly.